Old School Bodybuilding Clothing Company. If it's been 3.5 hours since you last ate protein and now you're starting to freak out, you are old school. If watching someone sit on a hammer machine for 5 minutes between sets playing with their phone pisses you off, you are definitely old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, competitions, it is all on the tables. We now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, before we get into the questions, you have an upcoming Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course upcoming next month in September. For those who may not be aware of what exactly you offer in the course or may be on the fence about taking the course, if you want to give the audience a little primer about it.
Yes. I have to thank my the people out there who follow everything that I do, because they actually they remind me to hold this course, because sometimes I forget. The time flies so fast. I'm like, I haven't had a course in 4 months. So yes, it's going to be on Saturday, September 17th, and it's going to be from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard to 6 p.m. We do an hour break for lunch. We have 2 sessions. It gets recorded, which is great, so that you guys can go back and watch it, again. And sometimes people miss a little piece of it and they want to go back, or they want to just listen to it 100 times. And really, there's a lot of information I give out. And I teach you I have 3 sections, basically. I break it down into nutrition, which includes how to write diets, but it goes over carbs, protein, fats, and then we do supplementation, which is the micronutrients, macronutrients, vitamins, minerals, trace metals. And then we do the performance enhancing drugs, anabolic steroids, GH, insulin, all IGF, all that stuff. We go over protocols and how to write diets and cycles and how to get people ready for competitions, men, women, old people, young people, with detoxification, site injection. I go over everything, basically. There's so much information in this course. You're going to get a 4-year college degree from taking this course. And I have people that take it, once a year. They take it multiple times, because the more they take it, they seem to absorb more information, and that's just the way it goes. You can ask questions unlimited. It's a really good interface. I think people are going to really enjoy it. Like I said, it's you get a lot for your money, and even if you're an established coach already, it's a good way to solidify some of these concepts in your head. Even if you pick up a couple new things that you didn't know. And the great thing is, if you have a business, it's a business write-off expense. It's continuing education. So go to DavePalumbo.com. The link's there. It'll take you to the website, and you can sign up for that.
Let's go to the questions. Of course, the first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience. That first question, we often get questions about protocols between the 90s and today, and I guess different types of gear. Well, this question is more so about the quality of gear. And I think the angle they're taking here is it seems as if there are a lot more fakes and a lot more underdose gear going around. So if you want to compare the quality of the gear from today to the 90s from that perspective, given that there's a lot more phonies floating around in the market today?
Well, I think you have to understand, I didn't start using anabolics till the early 90s. Okay. Now, at 1990, there was the Controlled Substance Act took place, which has made all anabolic steroids controlled substances. And it was very easy to get these substances before this. Everyone had a prescription for the pharmacy, somewhere, some doctor, because it was like writing an antibiotic prescription. So people had DECA prescriptions and testosterone, Anavar, Anadrol. They would just go into an American pharmacy and fill the prescription. When they made them controlled substances, these doctors couldn't write them anymore because they were being scrutinized now. And so a lot of people started going to Europe, and that's where a lot of the gear from the 90s came from, was Europe. And the European gear was really good. Even the Mexican gear, some of it was really good too. And it was dosed well. There was no one making their own because no one was able to access China. There was no internet. There was no way you can just go on the internet and order testosterone powder or Anavar powder or whatever you were trying to make. So no one made their own gear back then. I think maybe towards the ends of the 90s, guys were making their own Trenbolone, but that was because you can buy these pellets. These pellets were called Finaplex pellets. They would inject them into the cows to make them grow better. And guys would grind up these pellets and do this whole chemical procedure where they would isolate out the binders, and they would get the Trenbolone acetate, and they would get it into an oil and solubilize it and run it through filter syringes. And that was the first that I've ever seen of people making their own gear. But those were good because they were actually using these Finaplex tablets. Then what happened is the internet became a big deal in the 2000s, and it became easy to access raw materials. And I guess people realized, hey, if I can go to China and access, these Chinese websites, I can buy the powders, import them, and then make my own. And that's when people started making their own. But what people realized was, I could make more money if I put less powder in the oil, and sell it. So I think what happened is people got greedy. They made the steroids correctly initially. And then when people started buying them from them, they started saying, well, if I cut it back by 30%, no one's going to know the difference anyway. But I'm going to make more money because my product. And I think that's why what we have now. So back in the 90s, there was no one making their own. It was either real or it was not real, because there were some people selling counterfeit stuff, but they were selling nothing. It was basically just oil in a bottle because no one had anything you couldn't get anything to put into the oil. So either it was fake or it was real. And the great thing was that if and Bill Llewellyn was a big deal about this. If you knew what the real stuff looked like, you could be like Sherlock Holmes and say, okay, is the corner of the label correct? Is the pamphlet that goes in with the bottle, is it made of tissue paper or is it made of Xerox paper? And you would be able to figure out what was real and what wasn't. Nowadays, there is no very, very aside from the fact that if you go to an HRT clinic and you get real compounded drugs, most of the stuff people are using is all underground, meaning someone's making it. Now, some guys make good stuff, some guys don't. Some guys would sell you, absolute junk because they don't care and they just want to make money, and some guys won't. So there is some gear that's good out there, and there's some gear that's not, and there's some gear that's nothing, and there's some gear that's underdosed. And thank God for the Roy test kits, that I sell at DavePalumbo.com, because you can test what the compounds are to see if they are real. And then with some of the compounds, the DECA, Trenbolone, Enanthate, and test all the testosterones, you could actually test and see what the dosage is of the stuff. Same thing with clenbuterol. The one test will tell you if it's real or if it's dosed and what the dosage is on it. So that makes it easier, but still, you're playing Russian roulette. You just don't know anymore, and that's not really because the stuff in the 90s was better. It's just because the stuff in the 90s was real. And the stuff now is being made by people, not labs anymore. So I always tell people, if you have access to real pharmaceutical grade stuff, or you can go to if you have a clinic or a doctor that's willing to write you prescriptions for stuff, I don't care what they're charging you. Even if it's double the price, who cares? At least it's number one, sterile, and number two, good quality, and it's number three, dosed properly. So that to me would be worth its weight in spending the extra money. But that's the landscape that we're in right now. It's the Wild West. There's no control over what's in anything. The only thing you could use the Roy test to kind of get a trend of what's going on with the stuff you're using. Obviously, with the GH tester, it's good because it's either not or it is good. if they put nothing in there, it's not going to come up. You're going to know it's fake. The problem is you don't really know if it's dosed properly. So it's an imperfect world right now. You have to kind of just make the best you can do. Don't be cheap though. Test your gear. That's my best advice.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. What was your prep like during the time that you used to compete? Did you really use the protocols you recommend, like rotational diet and keto, or were those learned principles that you picked up, as you advanced into your coaching career?
My personal diet was always, at least toward the end of my career, was always like a cyclical diet, because what I would do is I loved protein fat. Even though I had a really fast metabolism, if I could eat extra protein and extra fat and keep my carbs really low, I found that my body responded really well to that, and I looked good and I felt good. But then if I would get super flat, I would have a day where I'd eat some carbs too. So it wasn't like I didn't have it all written down in the sense that like, okay, this is how many grams of this. I just knew what my 6 meals were every day. And on some days I would eat more carbs because I was just super flat. And then on other days, where I didn't feel flat, I would eat predominantly protein and fat in my diet. And I really liked the way that felt. So I kind of went more instinctually. As I started helping more and more people with coaching, I started to quantify these things and figure out, okay, how many grams of carbs, fat, and protein, given the person's weight, their metabolism, et cetera, et cetera. And now I have formulas, and that's what you're going to learn in the Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course. You'll learn that. If you're interested also, in the Dave Palumbo Experience app, that's $29 a month, you can sign up for that, and you'll have all my protocols in there as well. And plus you can ask questions. So that's another good resource you can use. But the truth is that, while I was competing, I was learning. I was learning my body, but I was also learning about how other people's body work. There was no coaching conventionally back then. People didn't sign up with coaching and pay you. I had guys that came over my house, like 20, 30 guys, that routinely came over my house just to hang out, and I did their diets for them. And I would look at them, they'd pose for me in my living room, and I'd be like, all right, let's change this, let's change that, do this cardio. And they would come over like 3-4 times a week. And it was like an in and out. I had so many people in and out of my house, but I was single then. It didn't matter. I didn't have any responsibilities, and it was fun. So, and we would hang out, watch TV, and talk bodybuilding. And so we'd go out to eat and stuff. And that's how coaching started, basically. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure if you ask some of the guys that were around, Chad Nichols and guys like that, that's how coaching was. You just kind of help people. And we learned the different protocols that worked and what didn't work through trial and error. And that's where you're getting the protocols today from. I mean, my protocols have evolved, obviously, over the years, because the more people I work with, the more, the bigger the database I have is, and the more I can say, okay, if this type of person comes in, I know I have to use this type of a diet with them. If they're not responding, I know I have to do this. And that's why the longer you coach, the better you get at it, because you have just more exposure to more people. And you know what? I'm always being surprised. There's always some genetic freak who's either got a crazy metabolism, who's got a crazy slow metabolism that I work with, and I have to start modifying something that I do, and it's not conventional. And you know what? I actually enjoy that, because it's not just the routine type of thing that, oh, if I give you this, it's going to work. Now I got to start thinking a little more. Wait, what's wrong? Or sometimes people, are screwing up their own diets, and they don't even know it because they're using condiments. I have this one client, she's new, I love her, call her the condiment queen. She uses the most condiments I've ever seen of anyone, and 9 out of 10 of them are not good for her, and they have carbs in her, and I have to teach her how to read the labels, and that's just part of the whole process.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. We have a lot of really good ones. We'll see how many we can bang out. If you're not already following us on Instagram, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're not already following us here on YouTube, we ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments or updates. We have all new episodes of Heavy Muscle Radio, the After Hours podcast, and then all of our coverage from the Texas Pro this past weekend. Really the big story, Andrew Jackson. And I mean, not even just for the Texas Pro, but the big story in bodybuilding has been Andrew Jackson, over the course of Heavy Muscle Radio, discussing as far as whether or not he could be top 6 in his first year. Well, that leads us perfectly into this first question, because, when you have a young, prospect, someone who's young and exciting like an Andrew Jackson, obviously fans will want to shoot for the stars and the moon. So S. Ball wants to know, in your opinion, can Andrew Jackson win the Olympia in his rookie year?
No, I don't think he's ready for that. I think that he has tremendous potential. I think he still has a lot to go in terms of what he's going to be putting on in terms of muscle size. I think he has just really started to tap his potential. I know that sounds crazy because he's got so much potential and he looks so good already, but he's going to get even crazier. I mean, if you remember when Ronnie Coleman and Kai Green hit the scene initially, you saw how much potential, and we were all talking about it. But then when they actually realized their potential and got really great, that's when, we started saying holy mackerel and talking about them. I think he has that kind of potential. Now, whether he realizes it or not, because look, there's injuries, there's life happens, things go on. You never know what's going to happen or what the person's mindset is or what they really want out of life. If he's committed 100% and he stays healthy, I think he can go, very, very far. I don't know if he can go all the way to the Olympia crown. Maybe. It's not going to happen this year. It's probably not going to happen next year, but he certainly could be in the running at some point down the road, without a doubt. He's got the tool set.
F-based. Interesting one here because so much of the topic of cardio is usually about pre-workout cardio or just, cardio on its own. But the question is about post-workout cardio. Does it have negative or positive effects? That's something you used to do during your career as well.
Yeah. The best time to do cardio is either first thing in the morning or after you train. Now, if you can't fit it into that schedule, it's fine to do it other times. But I like to do it after I train because I was kind of in a depleted state already. And I figured, all right, you know what? Let me do my cardio. I'm going to burn some good fat because my carbs are kind of low at this point. My glycogen's low from training. And I never did high intensity cardio. I always did low intensity, walking on a treadmill, walking on the elliptical, something like that, pedaling a stationary bike, not much tension on my legs, but moving. And I think you burn fat really well. I know a lot of people who like to do it first thing in the morning, get it out of the way. Or if you have a lot of cardio, do half and half. That's fine too. I never had to do that much cardio that I did it in the morning. Oh, I shouldn't say that. In the 90s when I was first competing, and even when I was at the national level initially, I did do double cardio sessions. And a lot of times I would go to the gym early in the morning. But usually what I would do is I would eat, go to the gym, train with weights, do my cardio, and then I would come back at night and do more cardio. I was never a guy who would crawl out of bed and look for the stationary bike or the treadmill and get on there and knock it out. But like I said, I never really had to do excessive amounts of cardio. If you're doing 2 hours a day and you got to knock an hour out in the morning, that's probably a good time to get it done. So wake up a little earlier, get your cardio done, take your shower, and then eat your breakfast. So either time is perfect.
Let's go to Alejandro Orms. How to cleanse your digestive system after a competition?
Believe it or not, post competition, you're really not, you're kind of in a cleansed state of digestion, at least anyway, because you're really not eating a lot of food while you're dieting. Your food is kind of scarce in a sense. You're eating just bare minimum and you're actually eating below what your body needs for maintenance. And that's why you're burning fat. So your digestive system is really not that taxed. Now your body might be taxed from taking anabolics and all the other stuff you're doing to it, running it ragged, but your digestive system is not too bad. It's usually, what I tell people is after you do a show, eat. Get it out of your system. Get all your cheat meals out of your system. And then if you want to do a detox, you can do a full body detox. I have that 3-week detox that I give out for free to people if you email me. And it basically, it's 3 weeks of, eating within a certain window, 12 hours out of the day, eliminating certain foods, keeping, portion sizes low so that your digestive system can get a chance and rest and replenish itself. And then taking certain supplements with that also to help cleanse your body. But, I wouldn't do it right after a show. I would get the eating over with first, eat what you want, get it out of your system, feel like a bloated pig, and then do the detox. That's a better way to go.
Khan Demir, what do you think about refeed days when cutting? Is it essential or not?
It really depends on the person's body. I think that there is definitely a need to up carbohydrates at some point, during the week. Now, sometimes I find that a cheat meal just sets people back too far. Certain people, there's usually women sometimes. And if we're getting close to a competition and we're maybe 5 or 6 weeks out, I might opt to give them clean carbs. Like on a Saturday, let's say they're on a very low carb or ketogenic diet with me, and I see their metabolism slowing down a little bit, rather than give them the burger and fries or something like that, or the Mexican food or whatever, I might say, you know what, let's eat your normal meals, but we're going to add 25 grams of carbs to 4 of your meals. So maybe I'll give them 100 grams or 125 grams of carbs for the day, which for, a dieting woman is a lot, and that fills them up, it carbs them up, but it can also stimulate the metabolic rate. I find that if you give people very low carbs, high cardio continuously, their bodies adapt to it. And a lot of times they stop losing after a while. So you have to kind of do the opposite and kind of try to reinvigorate their metabolism. And that could include feeding more, cutting back cardio, and giving their body a chance to kind of rev itself up again.
Hepner Jacob, could you use an insulin memetic or glucose disposal agent in place of actual insulin if you couldn't get actual insulin?
Well, if you live in the United States, there's no reason you can't get insulin because Walmart sells it without a prescription. So you can go into Walmart for $25 and get a bottle of a long-acting like Novolin N, or you can get the short-acting Novolin R for $25. So there's no excuse to not have access to insulin. The problem with these natural, insulin mimickers is that you can't really quantify it. You could take all the cinnamon and berberine and vanadyl sulfate you want, but you don't really know how much it's going to lower your blood sugar. Whereas with insulin, if you take so many units, you know how many units it's going to lower your blood sugar. It's a quantifiable thing. So if you're at a point where your blood sugars are not easily controlled and they're running high fasting blood sugars in the morning, you're better off just using the insulin and taking that burden off the pancreas, because the pancreas is telling you, look, we're trying to produce enough insulin to lower blood sugar. We just can't do it. We don't have enough. We don't have enough beta cells to produce this insulin. Help. And if you put a little insulin in there, long-acting insulin to start with, and now your blood sugars go back to normal, what you're doing is you're giving your pancreas a little bit of help. It's still producing insulin. It has additional help. You're taking some to help take the burden off of what it needs to produce, and it's not going to burn itself out now. And that's the whole concept behind using a long-acting insulin. Not everyone needs it, but I'm telling you, I work with a lot of people. I even have some drug-free athletes that have high blood sugars. And you know what? It's because they have a family history of that. And the older you get, the worse your blood sugar control gets. In other words, you start running high fasting blood sugars. It has nothing to do. No one eats cleaner than I do, okay, on a regular basis. And even I sometimes, see my blood sugars creeping up a little bit if I eat too many carbs during the day. I know what my window is. I know how many grams of carbs I can eat for the day before my fastings will go up a little bit in the morning, and I try to stay under that. But the truth be told, I'd probably be smarter just to take a long-acting insulin, which I've done for 3-month periods just to see, and I've restored some insulin function to my body to make it even better. But I'm still, and I'm a super neurotic, when it comes to health markers. So the doctors would definitely tell me you're crazy, your blood sugars are fine, running 95 in the morning. And I'm like, no, I want them under 90 because I know that's really what they should be. So sometimes if I hit most mornings I can get them under 90. Some days I wake up because I had a big meal the night before, because I was hungry and I felt flat, and I'm a little higher. I'm a 95 or something like that, or 94. And, the question is, do you do insulin or do you not do insulin? Well, if they start creeping higher than that, that's when I would start and put a long-acting insulin. It's really up to you. But if you're waking up at 115, which I have some clients who do that, you need a long-acting insulin. There's no maybe or maybe not at that point. Plus, I'm not trying to eat massive amounts of food right now and grow. If I was, I would absolutely be on an insulin because I couldn't produce enough insulin otherwise. And like I said, it goes back to your family genetics. So if you know that 3 of your relatives are type 2 diabetics and have poor blood sugar control, it shouldn't surprise you that you're getting it. It probably has nothing to do with anything that you've eaten or done or taken. It probably just has to do that the time clock went off in your body. And genetically, you just are not programmed to produce that much insulin. And if you're going to eat 6, 7, 8 times a day, you're going to need to supplement with it.
Nico Cantemir, can you take Augmentin if you're in the middle of a cycle?
I think you meant Augmentin, the antibiotic.
Augmentin, yeah.
Yeah, that's I've told people that's a really good antibiotic for acne. It's also good if you have actually an infection from taking a bad shot. Usually it's 1,000 milligrams twice a day. Now the 1,000 milligrams is actually 875 milligrams of amoxicillin with 175 milligrams of the clavulanic acid, which makes the amoxicillin impervious to the bacterial resistance. Because if you just take regular Augmentin, the bacteria get used to it immediately and it stops working. But the clavulanic acid they add to the amoxicillin makes it makes the bacteria not be able to mutate or adjust to it, and it makes it so that the antibiotic always works. And that's why augmentin is better than just regular amoxicillin. So if you take 1,000 milligrams twice a day, you can definitely get rid of some acne. It's not going to negatively affect your cycle. It's not going to affect your ability to grow. It's not going to make you hold water. Matter of fact, I would use augmentin at 1,000 milligrams per day, once a day, just the last 2 weeks before a show, just so that I wouldn't break out. It really cleared up my acne really well. Now, if you have an infection, you'd want to take it for 2 weeks at 2,000 milligrams per day, 1,000 twice a day, and make sure you always take it with food because it could mess your stomach up. And if it does give you a little diarrhea, what you would want to do is add a probiotic, and that will help you out with that. Because sometimes augmentin does, it kills too many bacteria, including the good bacteria, so you don't want that to happen. But yeah, it's safe. It has no side effects.
Couple of Olympia-related questions. Let's take this one first. Do you have the feeling that a big-name veteran bodybuilder is going to have a significant fall in the Mr. Olympia rankings? If so, who?
You know what? I wouldn't even venture to guess. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's great, who's not, who's coming back, who's not. We just don't have any of that information. It's not like someone has gotten injured recently that we know of, or that someone is not doing well. It looks like all the guys in the top 6 seem to be pretty healthy and coming back, and they're going to be better than they were last year. That's the way it looks. And plus, we're going to be getting new guys in there that weren't there before. So will someone fall out of that top 6? That's possible because we have some really good guys coming in, but it's going to be hard to displace some of those guys because that's a solid top 6 we currently have.
Chris Fisher, if you had to give us your way too early Olympia top 6, who would it be?
It is way too early. Look, you'd be an idiot not to go with Ramy winning again because the only person who could beat Ramy is Ramy right now. So I would go Ramy first. And you know what? I think Brandon's. He's hot right now. He's looking the best he's ever looked. He's one of these guys that you get him in that lineup, and his structure is so good. You got to go with him, and you can't bet against Hadi Choopan either because this guy is the most conditioned guy in the lineup. So that top 3 might be tough to break into. Now, obviously, Nick Walker and Hunter Labrada, are going to be guys that, and William Bonac are going to be guys that are going to be fighting for that top 3 as well. What's impossible to predict is who's going to be in shape and who's not. Because when we make these predictions, we're basing them on that everyone's in the best shape of their life. And that's never the case. It just never is, unfortunately. So it's hard to do that. Will Andrew Jacked break into the top 6? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it, because I've never seen him stand next to these other guys. It would be an insult to those guys to say that he will. But, Nick Walker looks like an absolute freak to me. Hunter looks like he's gotten better. They're young. If you're going to bet on anyone moving up the ranks, those guys would probably be the guys that would probably start displacing some of those other guys. But I think Brandon is too good to displace, and I think that if Ramy comes in at his best, he's not going to lose. So I think we're going to see a very similar lineup or very similar top 6 to what we saw last year. There might be 1 or 2 people shifted around in there.
Kate Groth, that using Humalog and Lantis on training days, can that have a negative impact on your health?
I don't think so. When you take insulin, assuming you're not taking massive amounts of it, some people recommend, but assuming you're just kind of taking replacement dosages, in other words, you're replacing the long-acting, with the Lantis, and then you're taking the short-acting, fast-acting insulin with some meals to help absorb all the food you're eating. If anything, you're probably taking the burden off the pancreas, and you're probably giving your body, something that's going to help it health-wise rather than hinder it. It's when you start taking massive amounts of insulin and you start playing with blood sugar, levels that go up and down, and that's when it can get a little bit dangerous because then you start holding excessive water that can raise blood pressure. So as long as you're doing like replacement dosages and you're not taking so much insulin that you have to start feeding the insulin, I think you'll be fine.
So we're going to sandwich these two together. Yesterday on After Hours, let me see if I can find this. You talked about the top 5 freakiest bodybuilders of all time.
Yes.
Can't find exactly who asked this question, but it was about Shaun Clarida. Can Shaun Clarida be included in that list as well?
The top freakiest bodybuilders, we made the distinction. We didn't say the best bodybuilders of all time. In other words, we didn't say like who are the 5 Mr. Olympias that were the freakiest. We said that the guys that were the freakiest, and that's why I think a couple of the guys, and I didn't include myself in the list, but Valentino included me in the list. I think Romano did, or one other person, or George did, because they felt that when you would see me off season, I looked like a freak. I looked like the Incredible Hulk, but I didn't have the talent of these other guys like Dorian Yates and Ramy and all these other guys. So when I did my list, I tried to pick the top freakiest guys who were also, good bodybuilders and who did well. I thought Lou Ferrigno, was a freak. If anyone ever saw Greg Kovacs in person, he might not have ever placed at a pro show, but this guy was nuts looking in person. He was so big and so massive at over 400 pounds, and he was pretty lean at that weight that it just blew your mind. So Clarida would look like nothing. He would look like a mosquito compared to these guys. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a great physique. He has an awesome physique. I love his physique. He's not a freakiest bodybuilder type physique. He's a aesthetic an aesthetic, what's the word I'm looking for? Truly gifted bodybuilder who obviously is a 212 champ and will go down as probably one of the best short bodybuilders of all time. But he's not considered a freak bodybuilder. If you can understand that distinction.
So that kind of ties in perfectly with our last question. If someone is qualified to do both 212 and open, such as Shaun Clarida, what is the big deal of letting them do both? Especially big names like Clarida, who's also won 212 and has won an open show beating top guys. If someone wins 212 or open and qualifies for the Olympia, they should be able to do both. It would add excitement. I know this has been a topic of conversation before, but if you want to rehash your thoughts as to someone like a Shaun Clarida, should he be allowed to compete on Friday night and Saturday night?
Look, I've been arguing this point since Hadi Shupin qualified for both. How many years ago was that? 3 years ago?
Yeah.
I've been going nuts and doing rants and going crazy, and everyone's like shushing me. But I'm like, look, if the guy qualifies for both divisions, and I'm not talking about like, let's give him a special invite. I'm talking he wins a pro show in both divisions, okay?
He earned it, yeah.
Then he should have the option to do both. What's the big deal? Who cares? He qualified in both. Why does he have to pick one or the other? Why would you penalize him for being superior or having an ability to do something that not many other people have done? Hadi Shupin did it. Clarida did it. What's his name did it? The guy from Spain. I can't remember his name. He just did it recently too. He won a pro show.
Angel Fernandez.
What?
Angel Calderon.
Yeah. Yes. What was his first name?
I think it's pronounced Angel, but it's spelled Angel.
Angel. They say Angel Calderon. Yeah. Yes. He's a freak too. This guy. So there's been a couple of guys that have done it, and for this year there are 2 guys qualified, him and Clarida, to do both. Why they would not allow them to do it, I have no freaking idea. There's no logic whatsoever. Absolutely none. It's like you're saying, you know what? You did something great, but we're going to penalize you for that because you got to pick one or the other. Why? If you could qualify in figure and fitness, why can't you do both? Right? I mean, how many people are really doing it? It's ridiculous. I mean, if what's his name? If Kamal would have won Tampa, okay?
Yeah.
And he's the Mr. Olympia at 212, so he can do the 212 Olympia anytime he wants. Why can't he do both? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's a silly rule, and hopefully they'll change it eventually because it is silly. Now, same thing with Classic. If you're a Classic guy and you can qualify in Classic and then you can qualify in 212, why can't you do both? Doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. I'm waiting for a logical answer. No one's given me one yet. I agree with the person asking the question. It's ridiculous.
No, certainly. I think that's something that, especially the weekend that Clarida won. What show was it? The CalPro? It was a show in California, I believe. Yeah.
He won. It was like the Tahoe show or something like that, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
He won at the end of last year.
Yeah, end of last year.
He beat Sergio Oliva Jr. He did. He looked really good too.
Wasn't Regan Grimes in that show too?
He beat Regan Grimes too. You're correct.
Yeah. No, but the point is, like, you remember the fans the days following that outcome. that was a topic of conversation, a hot topic of conversation. Obviously, it was an in the moment conversation.
Yeah, I've been going crazy over that topic for a while.
Exactly. So
it doesn't. I think the guy should be rewarded, not should be penalized for doing exceptional things.
One thing would be for sure. I mean, we're talking about an added layer of excitement, for the weekend. Now, granted, if you want to talk logistically speaking, that would mean that theoretically Shaun Clarida would come out right for finals of the 212, and then he would have to recharge.
But that's on him. That's on him. If he can do it and he wants to do it, let him do it. Who cares? Well, what's the big deal? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. If Lee Priest was competing nowadays, he would have been in both too. He would have qualified. So it just doesn't make sense. I don't know. I don't know what. There must be a reason for the rule.
And I do think it's a conversation that certainly will pick up steam as we head into December. So
they'll change it eventually because it's a silly
eventually
rule.
I think that's one of those things where once you start to have an outcry of something, and once it seems as if you have someone that would be I don't want to say qualified but capable, right, of putting on a good show in both competitions, I think eventually, in a sense, logic will prevail.
Look, they let Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson compete in two professional sports, right? And they even impeded on each other's seasons, right? They missed some games in baseball because of football, correct? If I remember correctly.
I saw entire documentaries where they would have to literally leave by this inning, get on a private charter, land, get into pads, play a football game. Whereas in this case, Shaun Clarida would literally just have to go from.
Yeah, he wouldn't have to change his posing suit even, guys. Come on. I think he can handle it. He's in the same venue, too.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episodes of Heavy Muscle Radio and the After Hours podcast. Of course, our coverage of the Texas Pro, and then tomorrow, of course, an all-new episode of Iron Rage with Lee Priest. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Tyler, Shaun, and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.